Have you ever stopped to wonder how someone can disappear in today's world? Not run away, not get lost, but vanish. No phone, no witnesses, no goodbyes. That's exactly what happened to David Miller. And decades later, no one knows why or how. David was a man who made his living uncovering secrets. But one night in 1985, the secret swallowed him whole. This isn't just a disappearance. It's a message. And maybe a warning. David Miller was 32 when he disappeared. A seasoned journalist for the Chicago Tribune, known for pulling stories out of dark corners no one else dared to look into. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. But some stories cut too deep. And the one he was working on just before he vanished? It may have been his last. He left his apartment around 7 p.m. Told his roommate, "I've got a meeting, a big one." He never said who with. He never came back. The next morning, his roommate reported him missing. Police found his car parked 3 blocks away. Keys and wallet on the seat. Everything intact, except David. There were no signs of struggle. No broken glass. Just absence. But here's what made it all more chilling. For weeks, David had told people he was being followed. Phone calls with no one on the line. Cars idling near his building. He said someone was watching him. And he wasn't being paranoid. Because just days before he vanished, he left a voicemail for a colleague. "If something happens to me, check the tapes. They know I'm close." But when investigators searched his apartment, the tapes were gone. Every cassette, every backup drive, every document he'd been working on, wiped out. Gone. Police labeled it suspicious but inconclusive. The press called it a likely runaway. But those who knew him knew better. He was sitting on something dangerous. How dangerous? 2 weeks after his disappearance, his editor received a plain envelope. Inside it was a grainy photo of a man shaking hands with a known mob enforcer. A typed list of city contractors, many of whom were later investigated for fraud. And a handwritten note in David's scrawl. "They found me. If this arrives, I didn't get away in time." The note ended with 2 initials. That detail was never released to the public. 10 years went by. The case went cold. But in 1995, a woman named Claire Holt, a former Tribune journalist, came forward. She kept quiet for a decade, out of fear. Now she was ready to talk. She told investigators that David had shown up at her apartment just days before his disappearance. Disheveled. Shaking. He said he was in trouble, real trouble. He handed her a small flash drive and whispered, "If I disappear, don't open this unless you're ready to know the truth." She hid it away. And forgot about it, until the nightmares started again. In 1995, she opened it. Most files were corrupted, but one folder remained. Inside it, an audio recording. You can hear David's voice, calm but focused. "They've already gotten to 2 of my sources. I'm next if I'm not careful." Then to a second voice. Distorted, almost robotic. It says, "You had your chance, Miller. This ends now." A crash. A scream. The sound of running. And silence. That file ends abruptly. But there was one more item on the drive. A single photograph. Low resolution. Taken in what looks like a basement. It shows a man bound to a chair. Head down. Barely conscious. It's grainy. But if you brighten the image, it looks a lot like David. The timestamp? 2 days after he disappeared. That photo was never authenticated. It was never released to the public. But Claire swears on her life. It was him. But more importantly, there was a second voice. A voice that made Claire's blood run cold. "You don't get to walk away from this," the voice said. The recording abruptly cut off. It was clear. David had gotten too close to the truth. But that was just the beginning. As Claire continued to investigate, she made a shocking discovery. There was someone who had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. A man whose name had been mentioned in whispers for years. David had been after him. And Emmer was not someone you could just expose and walk away from. Who was Emmer? What was his connection to the underworld? And why did David's investigation make him such a target? In 1995, a woman who had worked at a diner near the Chicago docks came forward. She said she had seen David, alive, after he was declared missing. She described him as being with two men, both wearing dark coats and speaking in hushed tones. She never saw David again, but she believed he had been forced to go with them. Could David still be alive? Had he been taken by someone connected to MR? But even more chilling than the diner witness was the body. In 1995, a body was discovered in a shallow grave near a cemetery, a body that had been buried for almost a year. It wasn't identified immediately, but the details were hauntingly familiar. The clothes were similar to what David had been wearing the night he disappeared. The body, though too decomposed to identify conclusively, was buried in a place that seemed far too specific. Could this have been David? The police dismissed it, but Claire wasn't so sure. Months later, an anonymous tip came in. It was a voicemail. The voice on the other end was muffled, barely recognizable. But Claire could make out one word: cemetery. Was this a clue to David's fate? Had he been buried alive, silenced before he could expose the truth? Claire decided to dig deeper. She uncovered something that sent chills down her spine. A letter that David had written just days before his disappearance. In the letter, David threatened MR. "You're not untouchable. I'm going to expose you, and you won't have a place to hide." But that letter had never been sent. It had never reached its intended recipient. What happened to David in the days after he wrote that letter? What caused him to disappear before he could send it? As Claire pieced together the timeline of events, she realized something terrifying. David hadn't just disappeared. He had been taken. Taken by powerful people who were willing to stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. The deeper Claire dug, the more she uncovered about MR. A figure shrouded in mystery. A man with connections to the highest levels of politics, business, and organized crime. It was clear that David had gotten too close to exposing the truth. And then came the final twist. Claire received an email, an encrypted message that contained a single image. A grainy photo, taken from a security camera in a foreign country. The photo showed a man who looked eerily like David. He was sitting in a small, dimly lit room with two men standing nearby. The timestamp on the photo? 2 years after David was reported missing. Could David have been forced to go underground? Could he still be alive, somewhere in hiding, keeping his knowledge of MR's operations a secret? But the truth is, we'll never know for sure. The case remains unsolved. David Miller, the journalist who was willing to risk everything for the truth, is still missing, or worse, silenced forever. Some believe he escaped. Others believe he was murdered. But the one thing everyone agrees on is this. David Miller uncovered something so dangerous that those in power couldn't afford to let him live. And now you have to wonder, what do you think happened to David Miller? Do you believe he was silenced by powerful people to protect their secrets? Or was he able to escape, living under a new identity? Could Emmer still be out there, pulling the strings of power from the shadows? I want to hear your theories. Do you think David is still out there? What do you believe happened to him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm dying to hear what you think. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, here's how you can stay connected with us. 1. Like this video. It helps us bring more gripping stories to light. 2. Share this with someone who loves a real-life mystery. Let's get more people asking the tough questions. 3. Subscribe. Don't miss the next episode. We've got more unsolved cases and hidden truths coming your way. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for listening. Keep questioning. Keep searching for the truth. And always remember, the mystery is never really over. It just waits to be uncovered.